Being 6:30, we'll call the meeting to order. Bills and manifests are going around. We're going to start off, we don't need any opening non-public session.
No, not in the beginning.
All set with that. So we will go right into our opening public comment. Anybody would like to address the board? No, no.
Turn that mic on.
Hi, I'm Karen Brieger, Ravenwood Drive in Northwood. I just wanted to express concern about what's happening at the 7th and 8th grade level. And as far as I can tell, all of these decisions seem to be driven purely based on scheduling as opposed to really addressing the academic needs of our children. So because a teacher was cut from that grade level, those grade levels, there have been significant scheduling changes planned for next year. Sadly, the plans aren't even fully baked, which is disappointing considering just how short the summer is and time for communication or for parent feedback. There's always a lot of focus on special education because it's dictated, it's mandated. The challenge that we've always faced has been not even so much kids in the middle, but I think kids at the higher end of the spectrum. And we only had a few opportunities for those children in the school within the school day. And sadly, because of scheduling administrative changes, we've taken away those opportunities. There's no more pre-algebra opportunity for 7th graders. Students who had advanced language opportunities, that's now gone too. And yes, the administration will say, well, we're extending language to all students. So that's great, and that's certainly nice, but it's taken away that opportunity that those children who were already participating in that advanced language had. They're now going to be in a class with children who've never taken a language, and I know, again, the administration talks about differentiated teaching within the classroom. In a class where there was already challenges teaching to children who were at an advanced level, they didn't get the academic opportunities that they should have had, that children in the past have had. And I find it very hard to believe that given the same teacher, the same curriculum, that there'll be success with any sort of differentiation. So the WIN, what used to be known as RTI section, there's no plan for what's going to happen. So again, another enrichment opportunity for students at the higher end. There's nothing. And maybe there will be, but the response I was given as a parent to when and what that will be, I was told maybe not even until the 3rd week in September. And I just don't understand how we can make such significant changes based on administrative scheduling things without taking into consideration the full impact it has on the academic excellence of our children. So I don't know if the board's aware of the impact of this, but I think it's important that you do know, and really hope that you work with the administrators in this building and the SAU to really make sure we're focusing on all students, not just special education and not just general ed, but we have a full spectrum of students in this building and we're not addressing their needs.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Any members of the board like to take this opportunity to make a public comment? That side. I'd just like to say I do believe we are going to have pre-algebra for 7th grade, just because I got a note with my daughter's report card saying that, signing her up for that. I don't know if it's going to be in the same form as maybe what your kids had, but anyway, that's all I had. Just wanted to respond to that. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment session. Moving on, we do have a special guest here tonight. We have Representative Brian Stone, who wants to talk to us and maybe get some feedback and give us some information. So thank you very much for coming.
You're going to get yelled at.
Oh yeah, we do need the microphone for you, though.
Gary's going to yell at you.
Well, here. Just so I know it's hard to. We can lower this. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the members for putting me on the agenda today. I wanted to go over what's going on in the State House this past session. So I did some digging and I found all the bills that we passed this year regarding anything education. So I just wanted to go through them, and if anyone had any questions about them, feel free to ask as I'm going through. And afterwards, I just wanted to confer with the board if there are any questions or concerns about anything going on in the State House. So I just wanted to show up to make myself available. So whenever you guys have a concern or a question about anything, feel free to email me or call me. I'll probably come to these meetings more frequently. So the first bill is HB 144, increase charter school funding by $250 per student for FY18 and $375 per student for FY19. I know some of these bills nobody might care about in Northwood, but I just put them all on here just in case. We established the dual and concurrent enrollment program that ensures all 11th and 12th grade students have the opportunity to enroll and receive college credit for STEM courses while they're enrolled in high school or Career Tech Education Center, and that's also done through HB 144. We allowed towns to receive grant funding for full-day kindergarten. We funded it for $1,100. The rest, up to $1,800. For the other half, will be through Keno revenue. And we also included an option for half-day kindergarten in the same bill. We allowed towns without a public school to contract with neighboring private non-sectarian schools. This is only for grades that school does not serve. So if school doesn't serve all the grades, or a school does serve all the grades, you can't contract out. Private schools have the right not to accept special needs students. You talked to me about this in an email that you had some concerns about this, so I'm willing to consider options to look at fixing that for next year. The school board has the authority to determine what is included in their contract if there were a contract with a private entity. I understand that there may be an unequal access to education potential of some grades in public school and some are private school, so I understand there's a concern there. SB 8 as amended states that the contracted private school education must be substantially equal in quality to state performance standards. So I don't know, that does not necessarily mean equal, so if there are concerns about that, can also look into changing that. I personally have a problem with that.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Are these
Sure.
all bills that have been passed and,
Yes, these
and
are-
signed and
these have
they're
been
actually
signed.
going into law? Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
We established the Governor's Scholarship Program to keep graduating high school students in the state. It's $5 million directly to assist high school students to attend colleges and universities or training programs of their choosing right here in New Hampshire. We have to understand that not every student travels the same workforce path, so that's why we passed this legislation. The scholarship is designed not to help 10 or 20 or 100 kids. We have enough funding for 1,000 every year, and that's just the beginning.
Is that scholarship based or how do you,
Yes,
so people have to apply for it?
yes.
Okay.
We established a robotics education development program. Started at $375,000 in grants to school districts. So if Northwood wants to establish a robotics team, there's an opportunity to apply for that grant and participate in competitive events throughout the state. We prohibited the State Board of Education from requiring the school district to implement Common Core standards. It doesn't repeal Common Core state standards, but it makes math and the ELA standards for local school districts optional. So the State Department of Education can't make any rules to do anything regarding these two subjects for Common Core.
Was there, sorry to interrupt again, was there something in there before? Were they requiring that? I never saw it, so I was just curious.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
There were rules at the
The
Department
Board
of
of
Education?
Education, yes.
Okay.
This bill would take a first step toward unraveling Common Core in New Hampshire. I'm not sure how the board members feel about that, but that's what it is. It's kind of a precursor. These are the kind of bills we see come up all the time, and that's what the inevitable road it could lead down to. It doesn't end the program, but if a school district wants to, they can end it. It would allow for, this bill allows for local decision-making. The school districts that want to abandon the national standards are free to do so. We eliminated the requirement for students to submit a non-academic survey or questionnaires without written consent from the parent or the guardian. This provides that no student will be required to volunteer or submit to non-academic surveys or questionnaires without written consent of the parent. It also creates an exemption to this requirement for surveys regarding youth risk behavior, so those can still be carried out. It's a result of a study committee from 2015. Several people objected to informed parental consent, so one of the arguments was the potential for losing grant funding if parents had to submit written permission for these invasive surveys, but we felt that it was necessary to pass it. You know, parents are, if they're required to sign a permission slip for something, we thought if it's non-academic survey. We had an expert in data security. He dispelled the myth that this information is anonymous for these surveys, and we have that information at the State House. There are questions that specifically identify the students on some of these surveys. In past hearings, we heard from New Hampshire parents who were upset by the invasive surveys, and they never received notification. Some people feel that not having these surveys will prevent adequate research or kids from recognizing the issue, but the way I see it is if the parent has to be notified, that opens up a discussion for the parent and the child. But the whole point is, however this is implemented, if you feel there are issues regarding it, we can tweak it next year. We required school districts to provide advance notice to parents and legal guardians of course material involving human sexuality or human sexual education. I have concerns about this potentially providing hurdles to adequate sex ed. So I'm going to come to more of these meetings, and I'd like to find out how that's coming along. I mean, I voted for the bill, but that's just a concern. We never know what's going to happen with these bills. I'd like to see the parents more engaged with their kids regarding this type of education as well. There is a concern that it could extend beyond health and biology classes. If there's novels, sexually explicit material, but that was not the intent of the bill. But that's not in the bill. So if that becomes an issue, we can tweak that. I intend to tweak that as well. We required the development and implementation of a pre-engineering and tech curriculum for public school students. This was 6th grade and up until this year, so now it's K through 12. So this has been, historically, it's been $200,000 each budget biennium that's doled out by the Department of Education. So a school like Northwood, we could end up getting $15,000 for something like this if you applied for the grant. The only caveat is it has to be matched by the school. So if you want $15,000, you got to cough up $15,000.
We'll do that then. What was that grant for again? Sorry.
The grants for pre-engineering and tech curriculum, which is actually, it sounds like it might be expensive, but from what we've heard in committee hearings, it's pretty cheap. And if there's issues about funding for equipment, the state, the Board of Education can get money from the State Department of Education for that.
You know, is it like a full grant, or can you get a partial grant? Like, could we do 5,000 and match 5,000?
Yep, you can do partial.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So like I said, it's very cheap. If you have to buy anything, it's probably, a robotics kit or a CNC machine. But, these kinds of things, it can cost up to $10,000 for a CNC machine, but it's a one-time thing.
So we have some money set aside for grant matching in a capital reserve fund too. So we can maybe use that.
So we established a committee to review and suggest improvements to Department of Education as well with HB 356. This bill originally had to do with funding for the Department of Education, but it ended up turning into a restructuring of the Department of Education. So this bill's been signed, and it gives the commissioner of the department the authority to reorganize the Department of Education, basically to allocate resources and personnel where he thinks they'll have the most impact. And that's going on right now, so if there's any input on how the board feels that the Department of Education should be structured, or if there's any issues with how it's currently structured, that would be great input to provide to me so I could tell the commissioner and the House can work on something. And that's all I've got. I listed some major legislation, but I got asked a question about it, so it's just for my notes. I wasn't sure if there are any questions regarding the kindergarten, but if there are, more detailed questions, I know quite a lot about it, so I made sure that got passed.
Yeah, I guess the only question I have on that is do you see the state going further than that and just providing full, for the full 1,800 without Keno, or is that,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, like in the future?
So, this session, that's the best you could get for compromise.
Yep.
And for all we know, the Keno might be the full 1,800. I mean, it's just not a guarantee.
Right.
But in either regard, the 1,100 is better than nothing.
Absolutely,
It's
yeah.
only uphill. It's not gonna, once a program or money's allocated, it's nearly impossible to get rid of it. So it's only uphill battle from here.
Mhm. All right, good. Anybody else have any questions or concerns that we'd like to raise this time?
Thank you.
That's it. You have any further questions for us or anything
Oh,
you're
no,
looking for?
I'll
or-
be here for the rest of the meeting if anyone thinks of anything or
Okay.
down the road.
We do have a public comment session at the end as well, so if something comes up and
All right, great.
strikes your fancy, we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have minutes to approve from June 15th in our packet, starting on page 3.
Motion to approve the minutes from June 15th.
Any discussion on these?
And one on page, line 395. Should be fourth grade art presentation.
So we're going to change instead of fourth grade
Art.
R presentation, it should be a fourth grade
Art.
art presentation.
Oh,
That was it.
that makes sense.
It does.
Any other corrections or discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstaining? Any opposed? No? Where did Tim go? I don't know. I guess motion carries 4-0. That's fine. We also have some non-public meetings on page 15.
Motion to approve non-public minutes from June 15th.
Second.
Any discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That's all of our minutes for today. We'll move on to the Assistant Superintendent report.
I was here just a few weeks ago, so I put your district determinations in for this report. I do have some questions that are out with the state right now that I haven't gotten my answers to. And if I can get to it. So, again, the data that you get reported on for special education is a year old. So if you look at the top, you'll see that that's for fiscal year 2015-16. Page 1 has to do with high school. And you don't have one, so you see a lot of NAs. But if we could jump over to 2, page 17 of your packet, page 2 of the report. If we look at the participation rate in the state assessment, I've got a call into the state to question if I can get SACIDs to identify the 21% of special education students who, according to the data, didn't participate in the assessment, because that is concerning to me. Even more concerning is we had a number of families who wouldn't allow the kids to take the test, but if I look at your district participation in reading at 79% and your district participation in math at 84%, if those were people who didn't take the test, those numbers should be the same. I've called 2 people at the state so far. The first was under the assumption this is a confidentiality issue, which it isn't, because there are district kids and we should be able to know the data. So that's what I'm working on there. If you look down under letter C, you'll see that reading in 2015-16, the state target was 19% students with disabilities would achieve proficient. And the district was 21%, which was higher than the state average. And in math, you were lower than the state average.
So the average or the target?
The target, and, well, you were higher than the state target, and you were higher than the state average in reading, and you were lower in both.
Yep.
Okay? If we go down to indicator 4, which has to do with discrepancies in the rates of suspension and expulsions of greater than 10 days with children with IEP, the district did not have a discrepancy, and that's good. You didn't have a discrepancy by race or ethnicity. If you go to page 18 of your packet, page 3 of this document, those are your percentages for, in the regular class, 80% or more of the day, and in the regular class, less than 40% of the day. And then letter C, I'm questioning, because the state had us down with 0% in separate schools, and your rate's 1.8%. So I've got that call into them. Your indicator 6 data is, I believe, is fair and accurate, because we have a community program that your special education preschoolers are placed into. So you have 0% in a separate class. If indicator 7 is about your preschool outcomes, outcome A is substantially increased their rate of growth in the time they exited the program. Your districts, and the preschool includes all 3 districts because of the way it's structured, so that's Nottingham, Northwood, and Stratford will all have the same data. You're looking at 85% exiting, having growth, and you're looking at 54 functioning with age expectations and outcome A by the time they exited the program. You can see that your top number is higher than the state target, and your number 2 number is a little lower than the state target. Outcome B demonstrated improved acquisition and use of knowledge and skills. Your district 73.7, state target 79, and then the number below, by the time they exited the program, 54.5 as opposed to 61. If you go on to page 19 or page 4 of this document, you'll see percent of preschool children with IEPs who demonstrated improved use of appropriate behaviors to meet their needs. Your district score is 89.5%. Your state target was 77. Your state overall was 76.95. And the percent of children who were functioning within age expectations and outcome C by the time they exited the program, 63.6 as opposed to the state target of 63.2, and the state average is 63.1. So that number is pretty static with the state. Your parent involvement survey, in the year that it was administered, your district, your percent of parents with a child receiving special education services who report that the schools facilitate parent involvement as a means of improving services and results of the children. Your district scored 33.3%. Your state target was 36. State average is 41. I think it's important to remind everybody that those surveys are mailed out, and then they get a reminder from me, and if they're not returned, then they don't count. But we did a lot of work last year with parent nights and parent involvement, and we'll see where we go with that.
So is that, when you say it doesn't count, does that mean like?
Like if you have 100 surveys go out,
Yeah.
and 11 are answered, that's your data. It has to be over cell size of 10. So what happens is we mail them out.
Yeah.
We post flyers in all the schools. We do an alert now, we've done, or a Blackboard or whatever system each school uses.
So I just want to make sure, this percentage of parents is percentage of parents that is was sent out to, not the percent of parents that responded.
It was the percent of the parents that responded. So
So-
your score is calculated.
Yeah.
So 10, I don't know how many, let's say 20
It's like
people.
Three out of, 1 out of 3 people.
Yeah,
Or
they don't give us
satisfaction
that
rate.
information, but it calculates into your, if you have over 10, then your percentage is calculated from that. If you have over 50, your percentage is calculated from that. Disproportionate representation due to inappropriate identification, this, you got a no, which is good. And then on to page 20 or page 5 of the document, disproportionate representation due to inappropriate identification specific disability categories. Your numbers were in line, so you got to know. The big one that everybody seems to stumble on sometimes, though it looks like everybody's improving across the state, your evaluation timeliness, the district scored 100%. The percent of children who were referred from early supports and services and were found eligible, your district scored 100%. On page 21, or page 6 of the document, it's one of the things I'm questioning with the state. So in your post-school outcomes, what happens is every 2 years, a survey goes out to all the students with disabilities that have graduated. And they can have assistance if they need with that survey by calling my office. And then, again, out of 30 kids, maybe we don't know how many responded. What's interesting is the reason I'm questioning some of this data is I know we still have 2 students from that year that were enrolled in higher ed, and it's showing up as 0%. But then if you drop down, it says percent of youth who are no longer in secondary school had IEPs in the effect at the time they left and were enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school. You scored 100%. So that data says that all your students are no longer in a secondary school and enrolled in higher education or competitively employed, 100% of them. And then below that, just to confuse the issue, we have the percent of youth who are no longer in secondary school, had IEPs in effect at the time they left school, and were enrolled in higher education or some other post-secondary education or training program, or competitively employed, or in some other employment with 1 year of leaving high school, your district scored 100% again. So the simple thing is everybody has a job, or they're in training, or they're in school. And that's the end of your district determinations for that year. Next time I'll do this is next year with this year's data.
So the parts where we weren't meeting the state standards or the state targets, I mean, are we taking actions to try to get us up to those numbers?
Well, you only didn't meet the state target in parent involvement, and we've always been working on that and trying to
Yeah.
meet the needs of our parents.
Yep.
And the other has to do with your participation rate. And until I get that student-specific number data where I can actually look up and then go back to the administration and say, did we have a student who refused to take the test? Did a parent refuse to take the test? I mean, that's how I'm trying to address that, because it seems like it's usually about 92 to 95% consistently is your participation rate. So I don't know there could be a data entry error in I4C where maybe there's duplicate students, and then when they go to order the test, they order one test, one student gets tested, and, there could be duplicate facets. I've got to go through those 2 systems when I get those numbers and try to figure out why that percentage is what it is. You can ask Dr. Godomsky. It's been a mystery to me for about a week and a half, because
Yeah, that number doesn't seem accurate
doesn't
at
seem-
79%, so we've got to do a little more digging into that.
And so that's what I'm trying to do, is get in touch with the assessment coordinator at the DOE, who was at a conference last week, so I got to give her a break there, and try to figure out who those kids are. she can't really figure out who the kids are. She has to provide me the SACIDs, and then I need to go into I4C and try to find them. So, but it's a mysterious number right now.
What about the proficiency rate for math, for instance?
I think you'll see in this year's SBAC data, or, well, what's now last year's SBAC data, that you have made significant improvements in your math scores. Again, special education's a subgroup in your general education population, so you've had a curriculum implementation, you've had an adoption, you've had curriculum work. I won't be able to disaggregate data because the state doesn't, if the state disaggregates in the future, I'll be able to pull it off of there. But at this point, all I can look at is how the school scored and how the state scored, and there's no disaggregation within the system that I'm using right now.
So can you present the same report to us next year?
Yeah.
So we can compare it?
You sure? Yeah.
To see if there's.
They
any
come out
difference?
every end of May, so. I think I put them in the packet every year for the years that I've been here.
But there's no trend, we're not seeing how we've improved or.
Your parent involvement was up, that it dipped a little. Your proficiency rates are increasing. If you look at your reading proficiency rate, you haven't necessarily hit that target every single time. You did this year, or this last year. Math, I think math has been an area of concern for Northwood that's been addressed recently. I mean, off the top of my head, if I looked at your math data, I can say you probably gained at least 10 percentage points in your proficiency rate over the year before. When you look at your whole school data, at least.
I expect that will be reflected in next year's
Yeah,
report.
well, if they, yeah, they'll pull the kids out. We'll know.
In indicator 14B, so am I reading that,
Which page are you on?
for 21 down bottom?
Yep.
Percent of youth who are no longer in secondary school had IEPs in effect at the time they left school and were enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school. So is that saying that all of the kids who either went to college or graduated from Co-Brown are employed or going to college? Is that what that's saying?
That's what that says.
I'm sorry, that's just not true.
Well, then if you subtract out A.
Right, which is one of the reasons I question the data.
I mean, it's just not true.
Not information I generate.
I'm not arguing, I understand you're not arguing with me, but I'm just.
I'm
telling you,
not,
that's
because I
true.
have the same questions.
What is
because-
competitively employed?
Well, you know,
That's what I asked
Chris,
this afternoon.
and he did. Dr. Goff said, "What is the definition of competitive employment?" And I said, "I guess we'd have to ask the OSEP at the federal level, because
Well,
they're
I
the
can
ones
think
that
of several that
require
aren't employed at all.
in this year."
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, is this data based on a parent survey or something too, though? I mean, if we had low participation.
No,
is this only-
post-school outcomes are based on the post-school outcome survey, which is mailed out every 2 years to your graduates of that year.
They all respond.
I don't know if they all respond.
You
don't know. I mean, I don't get copies.
Right, that's why I wonder if
So
it's
these-
100% of the people who
Let me back
responded
up.
or
Yeah, it's
something.
gotta
These are
be, yeah.
state surveys,
Yeah.
right?
100% of the
They
people
go out.
responded.
I have a list of SACIDs. I pull the names off the list of SACIDs. Mrs. Lee generates mailing envelopes. We put a letter in there. We put the survey in there. We mail them out. Those surveys go back to somewhere out of state, Gibson Consulting Group, and they tabulate the data. So we never see the actual surveys. The only time I see the survey is if a student like can't read it and needs help and calls, I will assist and read the survey to the student. But so, I don't know how many get responded to. I will get a letter probably that says that in a while. But those are state surveys that go out. Same with the parent involvement. I get a list of SACID numbers, I print up the labels, Mrs. Lee
I
puts
just
them in
don't see
envelopes.
a kid graduating high school answering a survey.
Right, that's
Well, I think there's another piece here with the state performance plan, is when the state performance plan was written, students in New Hampshire weren't as mobile as they are now. So kids, we've seen a trend in society where kids are either leaving the state, or they're going to school somewhere else, or they're moving to another place. So even mailing these to their last known address sometimes will reduce your response rate because they've moved.
Got it.
Fun stuff, isn't it?
Any other questions or comments about the report? Was there anything else you'd like to report on besides this, or is this?
I'll let you know that Mr. Burns started work. We started last Friday, a day early because of the Monday. So we got him set up with his computer, all his technology, and then him and I sat down in another fascinating process and rewrote the LEA manual based on all the changes in the law that were passed in March to address those. So from there, we're building a binder for each building that will have the policy and procedure manual, a copy of the new regulations, a copy of the new procedural safeguards, and then tabs set up for each type of meeting with all the required forms. And then we'll have that done in about a week. And then each building will have a P&P manual that is really very useful. And when an administrator sits in a meeting as the LEA, they can actually just turn to the tabs in the book and understand what forms the case manager is required to have at that meeting. I think the administration will appreciate that, yeah? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's what we've been working on for, what's today, Thursdays? The last 2 days. And we expect to have that done tomorrow or Monday. Other than that, your ESY starts next week. And that's about it.
Still to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Unless there's any other questions, thank you, Mr. Rooney. Ms. Young, we'll move on to the principal's report, please.
Good evening. Our report begins on page 22. The end of the school year went pretty smoothly. Thank you to everybody for coming to graduation.
Kudos. It was,
I agree,
that was, I thought it was
many years
great.
I've gone to graduation,
Yeah.
that was the best graduation yet.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
It
Can I get
was-
that in writing?
Yes, it was great. It was,
It-
and I
it was-
said that, yeah.
I mean it sincerely, that was the best graduation I've been to.
Thank you.
I thought it went very smoothly, very well. The weather cooperated with you wonderfully, and it was not overly long or overly short. I thought it was a great graduation.
Thank you. The students' last day was June 20th. Adrian and I found out about a tradition here that we had not previously known about, where at the end of the half-day, all the teachers go out and wave hysterically at the buses and blow bubbles, and the bus drivers honk their horns, and the kids who are not on their phones wave back. So that was nice. And then we had a brief stand-up staff meeting that afternoon that Sergeant Wells attended to say goodbye to 7 of our many departing staff members. And we wish them the best of luck. And I will say within about 30 seconds of the kids being out of the building, Tom and his crew were already breaking down rooms and getting things ready for summer programs. So I want to give him a big shout out that he's done a lot of work.
Floor looks
And we
amazing.
appreciate
Yeah, the
that.
floor looked great, walk it in.
Next ESY program already began. They had their first week last week. It was a successful week. We have 6 kids in there. They are off this week, and then we'll be back next week. Our 2 Title I programs, the Summer Investigations of New Hampshire program, the K through 5, that's more the remediation end, has 33 students participating, and then the STEM enrichment program for students in grades 6 through 8 has 14 students participating. We will also have our middle school sort of credit recovery, in air quotes, for kids who failed classes. This is an opportunity for them to make up that grade so that then they're eligible for athletics or other extracurriculars in the fall. will also begin next week. And summer staff in general are super excited and having a good time planning things, and many of them will be here tomorrow to get things set up. For hiring, we are continuing to look for a custodian. We have received a couple applications that we will do interviews on next week. We are continuing to look for and interview curriculum directors. We've reposted that position. And then we held interviews for speech language pathologists last week, and I believe we have a candidate. So that's hiring. For 8th grade, at the last meeting, we had talked about the actual hours put in by our staff members, that only some of those hours were paid, that we wanted to honor the time spent and compensate them adequately. The board had rejected the idea of 140 hours total. I revised it to what I think is still reasonable, which is 120 hours total. We do have a 7th grade advisor. You'll see in the superintendent's report that we have a stipend for that. We do have a Mara Vista advisor. So with those 3 advising positions, it would be a cost out of that co-curricular line of $4,000. So it would be overspending it, but I think it would give us the advising time that we need to make those programs successful.
So here's my issue with this whole thing, and I've been thinking about this, and I understand what you're saying. I feel like the board agreed to take those positions out of the clubs because we wanted more clubs. I don't feel like this would be coming up if we hadn't taken them out of the clubs. And I feel like we did this because we wanted more clubs. We felt like these weren't clubs that needed to be in the clubs. And I just feel like if this is what's going to happen, I'm going to say, my feeling is let's just put it back in the club's money and then it's just $1,000 and that's it. Because I feel like that's what it was when it was in the clubs. And if it's just going to keep coming up, then let's just put the money back in the clubs area and then we'll have less clubs for more kids than just the 8th graders.
I agree with Barbie 100%. I feel that we were generous to a fault when you consider it's taxpayers' money for a trip. I would not vote for this. I voted for the other, and I think that is and should be our limit. You know, if that trip is so important to the class, they're going to have to figure out how to pay for it, and I hope they do.
I'll move on. We also provided some information on our community compact. This was a document we had actually created in the fall. It was one of our opening days activities where staff worked together in small groups to talk about our school values and what those look like as adults. What does it mean to be a respectful adult member of our school community? What does it mean to be a responsible adult member of our community and a safe member? And we generated a draft and brought that to the building leadership. Adrian and I generated a draft and brought that to the building leadership team. The building leadership team wanted to get feedback from kids, so Dana Kelly brought it to the student council. We were expecting that they would have some adjustments to the language because it is sort of adult language, and they didn't really. I mean, they got it. They didn't have any changes that they wanted made, but they wanted it posted. And so that was some of the fundraising that they had done earlier in the year, was to raise money for the canvas and the paints. And so this spring, the members of the student council turned it into a mural, which is hanging on the wall on the way to the cafeteria. So on your way out, if you want to take a quick detour and take a look at it. So that's just a nice visual reminder of sort of the rules that govern how we all interact here at school. And then that is really all I have. We did receive, just in the last few days, a check from Life Touch for the spring pictures. So I am looking for the board's approval to deposit this into the yearbook student activities fund. It's for $188.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. That's all you had?
So that's all I had. I do want to know how to proceed, I guess, with the 8th grade advisor.
Yeah, I just have a question about that. So you're asking for, right now we have 80 paid hours,
40.
40 paid hours for the 8th grade advisor? And how many for the 7th grade advisor and Mira Vista, if you remember?
10 for Mara Vista and I say 30 for 7th grade.
Okay. So you're looking for an extra 80 hours for the 8th grade advisors beyond all that,
Yes.
which is an addition of $4,000?
Altogether, those 3 positions would be $4,000.
So, okay. So where, the addition, so you're overspending the co-curricular line
Yeah.
for that. Do you have a plan as to where you're gonna take money from?
Well, Dr. Godomsky and I have talked about that. It's hard to identify a specific line to do that, but I don't know if you want to take over. You would sort of,
Well, obviously, you're going to overspend one line in particular, and it comes out of basically at the end of the year, having a surplus funds. You've got some money in insurance that obviously is going to be there. I think the board has repeatedly talked about giving that money back if there's any surplus there, but we have had other lines throughout the budget that have been underexpended throughout the year.
But we also have in the superintendent's report tonight, 2 new hires that are like $11,000 more
Yeah,
than they
and-
anticipated already.
Yep.
I'm just pointing that out also, in the past, we have had this, the extra money, but there is also that we're hiring teachers because this is what we've negotiated. We've hired teachers at a higher rate and everything, and it's all, I think if I calculated right, and Tim knows my math, but it's like $11,000 more. So,
Well, just keep in mind that the salary line is all-inclusive, so these are $11,000, but overall, it's in the $4,000 to $5,000 range.
but it's
So
still.
it's still over,
Exactly.
yes.
So we're already, we're, 6 days into the new budget year,
Right,
and it's
right, it's
already
early.
6,000
Right, right.
over.
Right. That's the kind of thing I'd want to see is like, if this is a priority of the administration, right, that we spend this money here as opposed to somewhere else, I'm okay with that. But we should identify where else. What are we cutting back on so that we can do this? If this is the priority, right? If this has priority over something else, I'd like to know what that something else is, and then I'd be okay with that, I mean, yeah. We made a budget, but it's not the end of the world, right? The budget is done way in advance, and we can certainly change things, so. I would not be opposed to shifting money around if this is what the priority is for the administration.
I'm open for discussion on it. I mean, I'm totally agreeant that you need to put more hours into 8th grade. Trip, I made this comment last board meeting, that, we had one person that did all the extra effort, never asked for an extra dime. You're not gonna get that person every time. So, I mean, if they need this money to enrich, enhance an 8th grade field trip and make the experience better, then absolutely. I'm all for it. But exactly what you said, Keith, where are we gonna find that money? If we're gonna overspend that one line.
Right. I mean, if we want to,
I mean,
cut back
obviously,
the
it's,
supplies or something.
it's early in the year, and we've got some areas that CBNA Paraline is going to be under. We've already identified that, but again, that's early in the year. We don't know whether there's going to be a move-in later on or not. So we can identify that money now, but who knows what's going to happen later on. I mean,
Again,
obviously, when we look at the different sections throughout the year, if we need to find $4,000, then we're going to be looking at it through October and November, making sure that if we need to put a freeze, a hard freeze, or a soft freeze on to make sure that we're not going over, that's what we'll do.
And I
But
don't
there
feel
are-
that that's right.
Yeah, nor do I.
And again, we would not be having this conversation if we had not voted to take it out of the clubs. So I feel almost like we need to just vote to put it back into the clubs so that we're not having this conversation over and over again. There is no way that I am going to vote to have this money spent now, and then hear that, and it's just the possibility that we might have to do a soft freeze or a hard freeze later on that's going to affect the whole school. Absolutely not.
But you're okay for cutting the whole budget to put the full-time curriculum director in kindergarten and messing all up, but not willing to,
It's the greater good of more than just
4,000.
one class.
yeah, but this is something that will continue on for years and years.
Then if it's that important, put it in next year's budget. This was $1,000 that was in the club's line that we voted to take out.
You voted, I didn't, so that was before my time.
No, we voted this year. This year.
Was it this year?
Two.
Couple meetings ago.
Yeah, it was just 2 meetings
Oh,
ago.
I thought that was like.
No.
like
No.
2
He may
years
not have
ago.
been here.
We just did
I
this.
might have been here. bro.
Yeah, and I'm sorry we did. I'm, hate to say it, I'm sorry we did. It's, we opened Pandora's box and it's not been a good thing. And I personally don't want to hear about it another dozen times
Yeah,
over the
so-
course of the year.
I'd say if somebody who had voted against this wants to bring it up again for reconsideration, go for it. If not, let's move on. You know?
I already know it's 3-2, so why bring it up?
That's my point. So I think bringing it up as an idea for putting it in the budget for next year, though, might be a good idea to do. I mean, let's look at it again, figure out how much it's gonna cost and plan for it, I guess, right? I should have one other question about all the staff that left. Did we encourage them, or did they take part in exit interviews?
We gave them, everybody that leaves in all 3 districts have an opportunity to come in and do an exit interview with Linda Osborne down at the SAU office. And then what we usually try to do is at the end of the summer, I have Linda put together a kind of an accumulation of all of the responses and then report back to the boards.
So we'll get that at the end of the summer then?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's what I want to hear. Any other questions for our principal? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Ms. Young. Next up, we have some policies for second reading. I believe these are the ones we reviewed at our last meeting, starting on page 25. We have policy DM, EBBC. Is that it? EBBCR. Sorry, that packet.
The JLC.
CLC. Yeah, thank you.
Can
What's
I
up?
move them all at once?
Sure.
Move them all at once.
Second.
So this is moving to approve these policies, to adopt these policies.
To adopt.
Yes, okay. Any discussion on these policies? All in favor of adopting the policies?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I abstain.
Motion carries. One abstention. More policies coming up?
You have another batch in the queue already.
Pardon?
We did a batch last time, they need to come on for first reading.
Okay, great,
We got plenty stacked up for you.
great, thank you. Okay, Dr. Godomsky, Superintendent's report, please.
All right, I'll bring you first to page 38. Excuse me. We've had a really good pool of candidates to choose from. We've been fortunate along those lines, and we've got a couple of very nice, experienced teachers here to present to you tonight. First one is a nomination of Hannah Bongiovanni in grade 3.
Move to elect Hannah Bongiovanni as a grade 3 teacher.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have one more question on that, and I thought of this on the way here. The previous rate that's listed here, is that the rate that's on the new scale or the old scale?
It's what their contract said when they left.
So that wouldn't be
Be
what they
4
were
years behind.
necessarily making this year?
That's correct.
The 2017-18, okay.
Yes.
But when we did the budget and we did the warrant article to pass this, this teacher would have been making the 2017-2018 rate.
That's
But
correct.
that's not the one that's listed here.
This rate should be
16, 17.
It would be the 16, 17 rate because there wasn't a contract in place when the budget was passed.
But
The money-
the warrant article had that raise, but that's not the rate,
So
the raise rate,
So the amount we budgeted for is more than this, most likely.
more than the 37,522.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, this is what they would have been making this year if
Okay.
they stayed.
The 30, okay,
Yes.
that's what I.
Sorry, I
Sorry, yeah, I know.
misunderstood.
And I didn't explain it right, so that's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
Okay.
if they had stayed, this is the figure that they would have made.
Okay, so that's
Now,
where I was
remembering,
getting
if
my
it's a
difference.
teacher that has been in the district, they could be up to 4 years behind on the scale.
Right, but it's still the 37,522, the difference between that and the 47,12, that
Yes.
$11,000 or
Yes.
whatever. That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
Plus
Okay.
3,000 on one and 8,000 on the other, that's where your
Yes.
11,000 is coming from, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sorry. I just want to make sure that I was looking at the numbers right.
And that's, of course, just the base salary, right? That's not any fringe.
Correct.
Those fringes are gonna be up too, so it's gonna be.
Correct,
a little
that's
bit more than
salary.
that. Yeah.
Well, it might or might not be, depending on what they take for
That's true,
benefits.
that's true. Right.
Benefits are always kind of a little bit of a crapshoot, whether they take a family, a two-person, or a single.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion on Ms. Bongiovanni? Is that right?
Yep. I hope so.
Me too. All in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? Unanimously. I'd like to nominate the next person on the list.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was reading. The next one is Chelsea Claremont, grade 2 teacher.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on this? She's a well-experienced one, at
Yes.
least, right? Starting at step 7.
Yes, both of them are very sharp, bring some experience to the table, and I think are going to be outstanding.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Nope. Motion carries unanimously.
The next is for summer program Carrie Filaramo Greya for middle school summer school teacher.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously again.
Thank you. The next is stipend for Michelle Oliphant for 7th grade advisor.
Yep, we do these as informational, so thank you.
Nicole Billcliff for athletic director. Nicole Bolduc for the standards-based report card development, and Sarah Hashem for 8th grade advisor.
Was there a 7th grade advisor and a Mira Vista advisor as well? I thought you mentioned that.
There is Mira Vista. I have sent a lot of stipend forms over, and I need to connect with Linda about making sure all of them have made it to the packet.
And just a brief update on the curriculum director. We have gone through the first round of interviews. We have interviewed a second round on a couple of people. We've had at least one person decide that they were going to pull out. Actually, two people that, one specifically said that the salary was not enough, and the other did not give a reason, I don't believe, that pulled out. So we're in the process of looking back through the applications that we have. We've reposted the curriculum director position, and we'll continue to, as the applications come in, review them and see if we've got quality applicants to interview.
Is our current curriculum director willing to continue on in a part-time role as well?
I don't know that. I think that's a discussion that we could have. Obviously, you know, if we get deeper into the summer and we don't have a quality applicant to bring forward to you, certainly we could have that conversation.
Anything else?
And that's all I have for tonight.
And this speech pathologist, didn't we have someone in the pipeline? Or was that for,
Yes.
and, so, are we round 1 on interviews? Because it said that we're still in the hiring process.
I have identified somebody that I'd like to offer it to, but that's
Okay.
where we're at, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, if someone could explain why some stipends we're voting on and some stipends we're not? That's been a change that's happened over the course of this year, and I'm not sure I'm clear on
I
that.
think
So,
this actually started, I think, a couple of years ago, that we started, I'm not
so,
sure.
I mean, we've always, for instance, voted on our athletic director. We voted on our athletic director last year.
But that's
And
a
now we have an
hire.
athletic director here,
That's a stipend. Right, no, that's a good point.
you know, and I'm just trying to figure out what is our standard, what are we doing? I don't understand. I don't know this person. I have no clue,
Yeah,
no information. I'm very uncomfortable with someone coming into my school making $3,000 to be an athletic director that I know zero about.
Employee here.
Yeah, she's an
All right,
employee.
so,
Yeah,
but I
she's
mean-
one of the guidance counselors.
We've always approved this.
Because that's another thing off of that was that there is a retirement line in the athletic section. And that would go towards Nicole because she is part of the school. And the reason why it wasn't spent last year, because it was Mike, and he's not part of it, he's just a part-time person.
Yeah, anybody that is part of the retirement system, if they've got other positions like coaching or athletic directors or stipends, it goes into the retirement as well. If you're not in the retirement system, then obviously that's not spent.
Yeah, so I guess the athletic director, we've always had like one of the higher forms come through, so we've always voted on it as
We've
long
always
as I've
voted on
been
it,
here.
correct, on
Because
the
it's come
athletic
through as a
director.
higher form, not as a stipend.
right, for an
But
existing
they've always,
staff.
Because she's already
right,
hired,
and I don't
they're
know if
not
that's what the
bringing-
change was, is because since I've been here, it's not been an employee.
Right.
Since I've been on the board, I should say, not since I've been here, but since I've been
Well, I
on the
mean,
board.
Again, I don't mean to belabor the point, I don't know what her qualifications are, I don't know anything. And, you know, I'd like to know some of that. I know I wasn't given a chance to vote, but I'd like to. And I'd like to have some information before I voted. Or maybe she's extremely well qualified, I just don't know.
I mean, it's up to the board how we want to handle stipends, I believe, right? I mean, we've been doing this for a number of years, saying that stipends are informational, so we don't need to vote on every single one of them. I think when we are giving a stipend to an existing staff member, that's what
Well,
we've been doing.
the-
Yeah, but
There
what's
is
the
the
difference between a stipend and a hire? Because we're not going to hire someone from the outside to be a seventh grade advisor.
Well, in theory, you could. I mean, wouldn't be a good idea, I don't think, but, you know.
So, I mean, like, but an athletic director, you would.
you could,
So I guess
right?
that would be that's what I was actually just gonna say too, is like the athletic director has always been like a higher form, it's like a,
It has for some time, it
Yeah.
hasn't always been.
okay.
But
Well,
like-
I
since
do
I've
agree
been
that
here,
it has been
yes.
for some time.
Yeah, since I've been
but it
here,
has
it's been a
not
higher
always been.
form.
And, I mean, I wouldn't have any problem if we made some policy of under $1,000 or something, but over $1,000, I think the board should have a chance to understand what's going on, who we're hiring, what we're doing, et cetera, and vote on it. I mean, that's what I think.
Well, I think we need to look at that, because then are we saying that we want one of those higher forms filled out, and we want a resume and all of that, so that it's brought forward as a nomination versus a stipend? Anything over $1,000.
I feel very strongly that Northwood elected me to keep an eye on their money and where it's going, and some of the little money, I can't keep an eye on. I mean, that's what we have administration for. But when we start talking $3,000, I think this board should have an opportunity to know who's getting that position, what are the qualifications that that person has for that position, and why are we giving that person X amount of money? I'm very uncomfortable that I don't know any of those answers to.
Right, so what you're saying is it should be brought forward as a nomination versus
I
a
do, yes.
stipend?
At some point. Now, what that point would be, whether it's $750, $1,000, $1,250, or whatever, I very strongly feel that I personally would like to have a say at some point. And right now, that point in my mind is like $1,000. But, I mean, that's negotiable. But I'm extremely uncomfortable just going through and saying this 3,000, that 3,000, you know, I'm uncomfortable with that.
So we're going to do that for baseball coaches and basketball coaches
How
too?
much do they make?
A little more.
Over
than
that, but
like
I think we're
1,200 or something.
$1,250 to $2,000.
Yeah, all I want to know is that they're qualified and there's a reason they're getting the job.
So,
And we have in the past.
I mean, I think making a policy for this is a great idea.
Well,
And,
they have to be nominated by Bob.
I wonder if we'd hand that to the policy committee and ask them to come up with a policy to bring back to us.
I'm not sure you need a policy for it. If it's a procedure by the board, that if that's what you would like to do, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I like making a policy because then we can carry it forward. There's no question as to Tim says, how do we decide this? Well, we have a policy, that's how we decide it, right? Rather than, well, this is just what we've been doing. You know, I'd like to see a policy.
Do the coaches usually come forward as nominations or as stipends?
It depends on whether or not they're an existing employee. If they're an existing employee, they're a stipend. If they're somebody outside, they come through as a hire.
Right.
So
That's kind of
that's
how,
what's going on with
that's
this
kind of the
one now.
difference.
And I'm
Yeah.
thinking that's the difference, and I'm uncomfortable with that as a difference. A coach or an athletic director especially should be given a job not because they work here, but because they're well qualified. And that's all I really want to check. That this person, I'd like to know that this person is well qualified to be our athletic director.
But isn't there a policy stating too that if someone that works in a school,
It's in the CBA,
Yeah,
it's not a policy.
yeah,
I
CBA.
was just thinking that.
Right here.
they get the override anyways?
No, they don't get the
No,
override.
no,
No, it's not the
no.
They get
override. They
priority.
just
They
get,
get priority?
they get a priority, yeah. It's in the CBA. It's not, it's, yeah. That's what I was just
And
thinking.
I have no
yeah.
problem with that,
Right.
I have no problem with that.
Right.
So if you have two people that are equally qualified, I would want to give it to our employee. I have
And then it
no
would come
problem
through
with
as a
that
stipend
thought
versus a
process
nomination.
whatsoever. But I want to get, for this position, the best person that's available out there that will come in and take the money and do the best job. That's what I want.
So
And
for-
maybe we have it, but I don't know anything about it. I just don't. I'm sorry. I
So
don't
for
mean to
our next
belabor it, but-
packet, are you asking that they bring forward a hire form and a resume for the athletic director?
So, yes is the short answer to your question. So my question would be, I'm a little surprised that, has this been posted? Have we gone out and looked for qualified people, or have we just made the easy choice and said, here
Well,
you
for
go?
$3,000, you're gonna get
Well,
someone
we've
that,
gone to some pretty good
You're gonna get
measures in
someone
the
that's
past for
dedicated,
far
that-
less than that to get a
not-
good athletic director.
hopefully qualified.
That's fine. I mean, but we're supposed to get the best we can for the money we have. And that's not just saying, okay, you take the job and you get the money. And I don't know that happened. I'm not saying that happened. But I have not seen any postings. I don't know anything about this position. It's, I'm just surprised that it's there and we were just gonna go zoom and between the sheets and let it go. I'm surprised.
What do people think about, I mean, I think having a policy in place saying.
Policy's fine with me, yeah.
What we should do in this situation would be good.
But
I don't know
I'm
what
worried
yours
about today, not the policy.
Well, I mean, you can always make a motion to do things today, too. I mean, you don't have to,
We can pull the athletic director out of the stipend.
I just want to see some paperwork and to know what,
Bring it forward at the next meeting
I do,
as
yeah,
a
to-
nomination.
Approve all of these stipends and table this one for next time,
And just-
contingent upon paperwork that satisfies Tim's.
this might be the perfect candidate. I don't know, I'm not giving anything, just $3,000, please sign for it. Away you go.
I don't know, I just knowing, I guess this being a part of the school, I hear what Tim is saying. If I wasn't as connected as to the school and knowing all the people in the school, I don't have an issue with this person.
Right,
But
me
I
either,
understand where
that's- yeah.
Tim is coming
So
from.
do
If
I.
we hire someone I have no one that I don't know about, so.
We should have standards and we should stay with those standards, whether it's a policy or a standard. And not just bend the rules for every day, just today we'll do this and tomorrow we'll do that. I just feel that we should have a standard, and this violates the standard that we've had, in my opinion. Not the 750s and those, I understand that, and I really don't mind those.
I don't think it has, just because the standard we've had before was when we were hiring an outside person. I think that's the standard we had been using. But,
So do you want to make a motion to take the athletic director out of the stipend?
Well, you know what, actually, this is something that we shouldn't, we have an athletic committee, which I'm a part of. But shouldn't that just be up to the committee?
No, the committee brings stuff to the board. I'm more than willing. I'd be tickled to death if the committee would tackle this and gather the information and bring it back to us at the next morning as to why you want this person or that person. Leave this person out of it. This person or that person as our athletic director, and show us why. That would just be everything I want, right
So
there.
we don't need policy, we just need the athletic
Well,
committee.
whatever, anybody's,
well, I
you
mean,
know.
in my opinion, we need a policy to say, when is it that we vote on these stipends? When do we just take them as informational? I think we should have a policy that lays that out in black and white, very, so there's no question.
I think
And then we
that,
don't have these discussions.
I think that that's the decision that the board needs to make tonight.
Right.
What do you want to see as stipends? What do you want to see as nominations? You've got a building administration that doesn't take these hires lightly and is certainly not sliding somebody through just because. So I think that the board should decide what would you like to see and what would you not like to see, and would be happy to do that.
I would say that everything has to be like a new hire, $1,000 above, except for advisors.
Except for what?
For advisors.
Advisors.
Because we have advisors, like Sarah Hashman, she's an 8th grade advisor, she's getting $1,000 stipend. I don't think we need to make her, or an advisor that's already part of the school, to determine if we're gonna pay her $750 or $1,000.
I mean, I already said 1,000, so I mean, if it's 1,001 cent or above, I'm more than happy for that.
So the other thing we could do is just say that we're going to vote on stipends and nominations.
Yeah, because 1,000 and above, virtually you're getting them all anyway, so.
Yeah. So if we just vote on them all, which I thought we were doing for a while, and then we stopped doing it, but because I had made the point of that we never did it, and then it was like, well, we should do it, and then we stopped doing it on the stipend. So if we just say we're going to vote on all of them, then
No,
we
we
have a
vote on all
vote.
of them,
That's
but
fine.
we still
I
have, we
just-
just still don't have information on
I just
people.
wish, I would appreciate it if you wouldn't miss what my point is. I would like to know more about a person who is going to be the athletic director of Northwood School in Northwood, New Hampshire, and that we're gonna pay $3,000 to. I'd like to know more information as
and
to
if we have
what
the opportunity to vote on that
quality she
person-
has for that. What, you know,
That'll come up.
that's all I'm trying to say. It's not so much the money. I just don't know anything about this person's ability to be our athletic director, and I always felt it was an important position in the school. You know, and I don't know that she can or can't do it. I just would like more information. And yes, for $3,000, I would like an opportunity to vote on it.
How would the board like to proceed
I say we vote on all the stipends and nominations
from now on?
from now on.
Should we,
So what do you want for information? Do you?
So I say, you gotta go right back to what I said at the beginning. Everybody has to come in as a new hire. And that information, and why are we hiring this person? Just because they work at the school, they're just not gonna get the athletic job. Because then we don't, then just vote on them. We gotta know that Nicole Billcliff is qualified to be athletic director. I think she's more than qualified, but a lot of people don't know that. So I think that's where Tim is getting at. What, is this person qualified to be at that
right, but
position?
do we need a higher form for, the report card development, for
And
summer
so,
school stipends?
Let's go
for-
back to our policy. So we have a policy that from 0 to 2,500, Ms. Young can spend the money as long as she has it in her budget. And from 25 to this, she has to have a little more information. And from this to that, it has to have 3 things and come to the board for approval. That's all I'm looking for. I don't
That's what I just
want
said, yeah.
to do everything. I don't want to do her job. I sincerely do not. And I don't care if she makes choices on $750 or up to $1,000 or anybody else. But I'm saying, I'm looking at $3,000 of somebody that I don't know what their qualifications are to do this job. So that's, whether I really don't want to do them all. That's me personally. I like the $1,000 or above, but,
I'd like to do $1,250 and above.
okay. I'll go along with that.
So can we can we give our direction to the policy committee and say, please come back with a policy saying that the school board will vote for something over 12.50 and above?
That's fine.
For now,
It
and
doesn't
then-
solve the issue for tonight, though.
Anyone can make a motion tonight to rescind the stipend for this if they want to, and we can address it at our next meeting.
No
That'd be
decision
fine.
has been made for
We're in charge. We can do this.
No decision has been made for what?
I mean, make a motion. I mean, it's fine. I have no problem.
Well, I don't want to rescind anything, so I'll make a policy that we approve the stipends for Michelle Alafat, Nicole Bolduc, and Sarah Hesham.
Second.
Okay.
And then,
So all in favor of that, let's vote on that right now, I guess.
Okay.
All in favor of that?
aye,
Aye.
Okay.
I'm the one I'm voting on.
the other three besides Miss Billcliff.
So we're voting for them to be stipends.
Yes.
Approve the stipends for them.
To approve their stipends, yes. So those three are done. And I'm done.
Okay. Is there something you wanted to say, Scott?
Can I make a motion
Nope.
before?
Was this 5-0?
Yes.
Sorry, Shane, which way did you vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
I would like to make a motion that Miss Nicole Billcliff for athletic director be brought back at the next meeting with information supporting so that we can vote on it
Second.
as a nomination.
Any discussion on that? All in favor of that?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, aye, sorry, aye.
Yes, motion carries, 3-2. Yes.
So in the interim, as we come into the next meeting with the same discussion in place, what would you like to see for stipends and what would you like to see for nominations?
I think 1250.
Because as-
Right now,
because
we're
at-
talking about 1250 being.
What do our coaches make?
Around there.
But please understand that when you've got stipends for positions in your school, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500, and I'm going to leave the athletic director out because that, I understand that kind of a different position. But we try very hard to recruit, enlist, pull in the teachers for taking on additional work and take the stipends. It's a win-win for the school, it's a win-win for the students. And as I mean, they're already staff members, they're already qualified to teach, they're already qualified to be working with children. And I mean, I hesitate to, even at $1,500, do you want resumes? Do you want information? I mean,
No, I think it's
to
just
me,
kind of-
that's overkill.
I think the board just wants to have
I
approval.
think a
of those
paragraph that just describes why they were chosen. I think that's enough. I don't
And-
think
and
we
I-
need a whole resume.
I agree, and I think a lot of times we won't have questions. We might even know the people, but we're not taking away anything. We just would like some skin in the game. Or at least I would.
So can I make a suggestion that until we have our new policy in place, that we will just plan on voting on all the stipends? Just voting on them, not that we need extra
I don't
information on
think
them,
that's
but at
really
least voting on
necessary,
them.
though. I think that
Well,
I agree, but it doesn't matter to me. I cannot think of one, I'm trying to think, the athletic director notwithstanding, when's the last time we turned down a stipend, really? I mean, it's not my point. I'm not trying to turn down anything.
I'm just
I
trying to get
wanna have some
clarification on what
information.
you want from me to bring forward.
I
we need to give-
think we're just making it too
Should we just
difficult.
make the athletic director a like a nomination thing instead of a stipend, whether they're an employee or someone from the outside? Because if it's the athletic director that's the big thing,
Well, it's not gonna be just that, I mean, coaches come from the outside too, most of the time.
but
Not
they've always
but-
come from the outside.
I have to
Always
be honest
hired-
with you and say
we've
that
always
I've been
hired
kind of waiting to ask this question because I haven't understood what we're doing. You know, because I know that way back, we approved everything, and then we started moving away from that. And I'm uncomfortable with that, but up to a point, I'm not. And I would more than be willing to say that point's 1250, but at some point,
I just feel
I
like, do we
feel
need
that
all
I
this
should know what
paperwork
I'm
though,
agreeing
Tim? That's
to.
the thing, is
Well, I'm not
if
saying-
they can come, if the administration can come with just an explanation, is that good enough? Do you need paperwork?
No.
depends on the position, but mostly no.
Like if it's the athletic director, okay, I guess that's the thing, is like there's just so much paperwork. Do we need the paperwork? Because
But
they've
that's-
already looked through the paperwork.
That's not what I'm suggesting, by the way. I'm suggesting just that we vote on it. Not that we not get any extra paperwork unless we want to. You know, if we ask for it, you know, maybe we say and we maybe would expect that the administration for these bigger ticket items will come with information about these things in case we have questions, just like they would with our teachers.
I don't think you
Right.
need a policy to make the athletic director a nominated position that requires, I mean, like, that's just the procedure that we want to follow for that. I don't think you need a whole policy based around that
I think
one
if we had a
position.
policy, this conversation would have taken 5 minutes. So I think having a policy is probably a good idea.
Well, I think we just need to go back to voting on all of them then, like we
And
did
if that's the policy,
before.
that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Well, I
right?
don't think we need a policy to do that. We just got away from it
Again,
for some
if we
reason.
had a policy, we would have been done with this discussion 20 minutes ago.
Well, and who's
So-
to say that we don't have a policy? Do we have a policy that might state something like this? Do you know, Scott?
You don't, but I might like to say something to the board, and this is just something to think about. And it's an element of style from boards, and different boards do different things, right? You confirm your professional staff, right? You vote on them, right? Which gives them a certain amount of due process rights to come to the board when they have an issue or having an issue and come to the board, right? Informational stipends are done because then the due process stops with the superintendent. So to remove somebody from a position for whatever clandestine behavior that might occur or just inappropriate behavior becomes extremely difficult because when you vote, you have given you've given those positions the right of appeal to the board. So some districts try to stay away from that with their hourly employees and their stipended positions because your real, it can potentially, if there's a lot of situations going on, making your action very shallow when you should be, if you have a dismissal hearing or something like that, you should be focused on that.
But
you
if
hear what
they're
I'm
an
saying?
employee of the
I'm not,
district.
I'm just gonna finish and then I'm not gonna say anything.
Well,
but-
but going back to that
Let him
though, if
finish.
they're
Let
an
him finish, and then
employee, they
we'll-
have that right to the board
Probably let him
anyway.
finish and,
Not if it's done as an informational stipend.
right, we can remove them from stipend position. not-
Then the
not remove them from
contract is with the
position.
superintendent directly, the work agreement. And I'm done. That's all I wanted to say. There's just ramifications that you need to consider. That's all.
No, thank you. That's-
So let's make a policy.
Well, I'm not quite sure what
I don't know what
policy
you
you
want the
want.
policy.
I think it's just, the whole thing is ridiculous. Like, it's just ridiculous. I know who she is, vote her in. I mean, if you have questions, then I just don't think we need to be doing this.
I would disagree, but
I would like to bring this up at our next meeting, just because I'd like a little bit more time to process exactly what Scott just said, and I don't feel like we need a policy for this. I just would like a little bit more time to process the whole thing and then give directive.
So again, like Bob said, what do you want for the next meeting for this position?
Well, next meeting, I'm planning on bringing back as a nomination with a hire form and a resume and a recommendation, and the board can choose to proceed how they would like to.
Perfect.
Well, then I look
For
at
that
what
one.
Scott said from that, though, because that was the directive we just gave you, but then I think about what Scott just said about, but it's just that one position. So if something happened in the athletic position with this, that would be the only position that Dr. Godomsky could remove a person that already has a contract with the school from?
No, Dr. Godomsky can remove any employee with
Right, but
pay.
the-
Just as due
but-
process.
Right,
as due
but the
process
due
attached.
process stops at Dr. Godomsky if it's a
If the vote-
stipend versus a
Say-
nomination
right.
for the athletic director,
Correct. So,
even if they're part of the CBA.
no. So
It would
for your
just be
paras,
the-
for your paras and your teachers, because you've negotiated agreement, they have due process up to the board. For your other hourly employees, depending on how they're nominated, or whether it's informational stipends are done that way to have the due process stop with the superintendent. So it doesn't water down your activity.
Right.
Can you imagine if everybody was all, you know,
Well, just, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, we took the athletic director position out of the CBA, because if it had still been in the CBA, they would have been covered under the CBA. But
And
the
it was a
athletic
lot-
I
director
don't
was-
believe that was the reason you took them out.
No, that was not the reason.
hope it
but-
wasn't.
But that would not pertain to this position, is what I'm saying, because it's no longer in there. So the due process would stop with the superintendent.
If you took it as an informational stipend.
Right.
We
I'm
took
just
them
making
out
sure that
because
I'm
we wanted to
understanding.
control the amount of money we were
I
paying.
think that's a very good point. I mean, I think with that information,
Right.
maybe we should just do stipends of staff members as informational,
Right.
period.
May I say something?
No.
So I would hope that in the year we've been here, Adrian and I have demonstrated our commitment to the responsibilities of our positions. I hired this person in good faith. The language in the budget says athletic director stipend. My understanding, as I said, is that a stipend is for an existing Northwood school employee. She was by far and away the best candidate. She was recommended by the departing athletic director. And I would hope that you would trust my judgment. This is not the only $3,000 stipend we've done. Sharon Plord was also for the drama club. So just wanted to put that.
Yeah, I don't, by the way, I just don't think that because it's in the budget that it needs to go to a staff member. I mean, because we have had outside hires for.
No, and I don't think so either, but
Yeah.
just the word in there is stipend, and my understanding is that I do a stipend form for somebody who is an existing employee. So that is why it's not, I was not trying to bend the rules or take the easy way out.
Okay, thanks. No.
I don't do that.
So we need to give the administration a directive going forward then, if we're not gonna do a policy. I'd like to propose that, our directive is that stipends for staff members are informational for the board. Is there any agreement to that, or should we?
Yes, I agree
Backtrack.
with that after listening to what Scott was saying.
So then this position would be informational?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I would not agree to that.
Can we add information to that?
We
Can
can,
they
we
be-
can ask the administration at any time for information. I mean,
But
this
I'm
is.
saying, like, if we agree with what you just said,
Yeah,
on, contingent on the fact that they include some sort of information, just to explain their choice.
I'd be okay with that, that's fine. yeah.
And again, it doesn't have to be a resume, it doesn't have to be a book, just a paragraph that says, this is why this person was chosen,
For what, for anything?
or anything,
Anything we ask for.
or
You
anything
want that, you want that
over-
for, I mean,
Oh,
there's a lot
no,
of
no.
stipends, right?
No, yeah, no, not for all of those.
Why don't you just ask her?
Right. That's the thing. She's here, we can ask her,
Talking.
right? It's, that's, seems kind of silly to me too, but. So, is there, I'd like to get a definitive,
I would like to
Hold
keep
on,
them
this-
as stipend,
I don't
as
even know why we're talking about
informational
this. Right,
after.
I make a motion then, I'm just gonna make a motion that going forward, stipends are information, stipends of existing staff members are informational. There'll be nominations if they're hiring from outside. Right,
Second.
we have discussion on this. All in favor of this directive going forward to the administration?
Aye.
All right, opposed? No, okay, motion carries 4-1. Is that clear?
Having said that,
Just to add a little bit of clarity, so that covers our athletic director for tonight.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
sorry.
Okay. Well, that was fun. You got anything else?
No.
Not anymore.
All right, does anybody
That's all I have.
Anybody have any other questions for our superintendent? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. Have there been any committee meetings in the last 3 weeks? Since our last?
Yeah,
We got a pile ready. No, Bruce just asking.
I'm just talking to myself.
So policy committee, I mean, you guys met for this stuff, right? So,
We didn't meet this last 2 weeks because we got a whole another set for you to go in the next packet. If we get too far ahead of ourselves, we forget.
that's fine.
Alright, we have some, they're ready to come
Yep, that'll be in your next
for the
packet.
next
Okay.
meeting.
First reading.
Any facilities committee, health and education committee hasn't met, athletics committee, no. Clubs are all set? Ms. Hartford, clubs are all set?
No, I had emailed, for the paras, and she'd gotten back to me and said that she had put the feelers out or whatever, but hadn't heard anything, and then I never got back to her again, so.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that then.
Yep.
I don't think the technology committee didn't meet. Facilities, I think that's pretty much. Budget committee,
August, like, well, we haven't gotten a current, it is confirmed, okay, it's the end of August, just so that we have our books closed for the school and everything like that. I can't remember if I have the date in my phone, but it's the end of August.
Okay.
Or mid-August, mid.
moving on to old business then. Laker gear update, do we have a
I talked to
trademark?
Mr. Gendebart asked that I get a quick legal opinion on having the Laker Gear website for 8th grade and then for future 8th grades to come. If there was any sort of copyright or kind of
Trademark
equity
maybe, I
issue, trademarking issue. I talked to Attorney Goro the next day, explained the structure and the situation. She said that should be fine. There should be no problem with that.
Thank you.
So we need to make a motion.
I tried to use the cheap method, rather than getting it in writing, just doing a verbal conversation, then I just get billed for the verbal conversation, but there's your answer from Attorney Goro. If the board doesn't like that answer, I can have her go back and write a formal opinion, but.
I think that's sufficient. So yeah, I guess the motion would be to approve the 8th grade fundraiser to use the Laker Gear trademark for this year and any subsequent years for the 8th grades to be able to do that.
Second.
Does that make sense? Try to ramble a little bit. Any discussion on this? You look confused.
I was just thinking about that letter that I forwarded to the board.
Okay.
I
anything
think
on
that's
this?
a non-public
Yeah,
discussion,
could be.
though.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Go with unanimous on that? Yep. Scrubber update?
The scrubber update,
It's up there. It's up there.
we've got one scrubber that is not in use anymore. My understanding is that we tried to trade it in when we purchased the other one, and they didn't want it as a trade-in. It's
kinda sad.
presently on Craigslist. I believe it's listed for $100 or best offer, or a trade, or a barter, or anything else that
Firm
anybody
handshake.
would like to come. So if anybody's interested in taking it, that'd be great. At this point, we haven't had any takers, and Tom is moving it around the building, trying to keep it out of the way. So with the board's approval, we'll see if it's even worth anything for scrap and get rid of it.
It's broken, right? It's like not working?
We have it up for parts, and
Yeah.
yeah, like
okay.
Tom said, it would be a significant amount
Or
of
harding
money.
metal, maybe we'll take it.
So moved.
Yep. Absent objection, go for it.
Thank you.
No, unanimous consent.
Get rid of the scrubber.
Yeah, you're right, the scrubber, right.
We're gonna put it in the back of your car on the way home.
So, our next thing is a CIP discussion. We do have, I see some numbers on page 44 of our packet for the CIP.
Are these recommended by the facilities committee or the administration, or both?
This is the list that came forward to us, all-inclusive. I'm
The
not
last
sure-
facilities committee, Tim and I talked to the administration and Tom about coming up with 5 years from now, so we can start developing our CIP.
So this did come from the facilities committee.
I believe the facilities committee's met on this, right?
We haven't, we just told Tom and administration, what needs replacement in 5 years? And this is kind of like what
So this
they
didn't
came
go
up
to
with.
you yet as the
No.
committee. This came straight from
Okay,
Mr.
so this is what we
Tom
put
to
together.
us. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
That's what it sounds like. I'm glad to see the computer replacement plan in there.
I was glad to see the cafeteria ceiling in there.
Not being familiar with CIP plans, what is the next step that we do for the?
Well, I know that Joe Gunter has been calling me and asking, when the board was going to get to this, so it could go forward to their process as well and be included in that. So if the board feels comfortable with what's in front of you, or if you want to make any changes, at that point, I'll get it to Joe as our initial contribution to the CIP.
I just, just because my kids go here, but not because I've spent amount of time upstairs when it's hot or anything, but one of the things I had thought of, because it would be a significant amount of money, is like air conditioning or, something like that.
Air conditioning.
For especially the upper, as part of a CIP plan, I know that they have them in certain rooms, one or two, the office definitely, but I think there's like one other room that has it. But I didn't know if that would be something.
Maybe we could mention it to Mr. Tom and see what he thinks of that plan. I mean, if he didn't put it on the list, I'd kind of want to come from him, to see, it might be a reason why he didn't have that on the list, but,
So some of the structural things is like roof. We haven't included roof in here anywhere. We've replaced a little part of it a few years back. I'm sure that that is something that we need to have somebody, look at and estimate what we need to do. I don't know where some of the costs in here came from. I don't know, these just wild guesses. I'm not sure. The kitchen also has been another item that's been on our list for a number of years, and I do realize that we're with Fresh Picks right now, but I just, that's something that at some point we should look at. There's some pretty big equipment in there that we need to address. As far as, I see that they're basketball court resurfacing, and upper playground upgrade, but again, that's the first I've heard of an upper playground upgrade. I'm not sure what that means, so what would that mean? What would we be spending $80,000 on?
Ms. Young, do you want
So I'm,
to have any information on that, Dave?
Sure, so we were looking at new playground equipment, new swings, new jungle gyms. And that is an educated guess based on, for cost in terms of some formula that I found online from a playground company. Super scientific, probably not, but I went with it.
And for the other numbers came from estimates or bids or?
Yeah, so when I spoke with Tom and Steve, they said that many of these things had already been explored or put out for quotes in previous years, and so they used those quotes as a basis for their estimates.
Thank you.
So, and that's fine. So let's pick on the lower cafeteria ceiling. We have a bid on that? Somebody's made a bid in the past few years?
I think that there has been talk about that, yes.
Yeah, there was
Well,
a
we've
combination.
talked about
There
it,
was a
but-
combination of different things, of different levels and different stages that we could do. One was like 5,000, and it was like different. It came out to about that $25,000.
So if this list needs some grooming by the facilities committee, I'd
Yeah,
say
yeah.
let's do that offline, unless there's a big rush for it. I mean, it's Joe waiting
Well,
with
I
bated
think,
breath for our
I
list,
think they've
or-
already,
Waiting for a
I think
while.
they've already started the
Yeah, 3
process.
years.
They've started the process, and they, Joe's called a couple of times asking about it. I mean, it's something that I think that if you want to contribute to the capital improvement plan, I think it would be great to have your facilities committee really sit down, and, I mean, these are guesstimates at what it will be. If there's something in particular, like a roof or something like that, that the board feels strongly that might be needed to be looked at in the next 5 to 10 years, then, I think that we can get some very quick quotes on.
I think the kitchen
Am
and the
am I
roof
wrong in saying that capital improvement plan is a certain amount of money? You don't vote on, you don't put what you want in there, you just come up with a certain amount of money, correct?
Well, you've got to have ballpark
Absolutely not.
figures. I mean, if you don't have something that's fairly close, you're just throwing a dart at it.
Granted, but we don't need exact,
No, you don't need exact bids or quotes, but you should be, I mean, if you're talking about, like, the playground upgrade at $80,000, I mean, I think that's pretty accurate to what you're gonna spend. You're gonna spend anywhere from, a low of 55, 60,000 up to 120 or 140,000 for a playground. So, I think that's a ballpark look at that one. If there's anything else you're going in here, I think it's a good idea to sit down and look at, is the roof going to be replaced in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Same thing with the boiler. Is that gonna be 10 years, 15 years out? Even the paving, I know we've done a lot of it already, but when does that come around again? Sealing of the pavement.
The lockers, what did we say was the price on those? Was that above 10,000?
Yeah, a lot of those things. So
30,000.
this is just a quick look from, we asked Mr. Tom and we asked Steve, and these are just the first things that surfaced.
I mean,
But
and this is what we asked them to do, is just come up with a list. We didn't, we did anticipate that it needed.
And I agree with that, and I think at some point, the board has to do some of the work. So if you just pick on the roof, it's in bits and pieces. So the roof under the new section of the school is 12 years old? We
New
paid off a
section
lot
being
more.
the
It's
gym?
11, 12, yeah. It's 11, 12 years old, and we put a rubber roof on that, and what was the expectancy of the rubber roof? So let's say that's 25 years, so then our CIP, we need to plan on having the money for the roof, but we have a lot more roof, part of which we replaced 4 years, 5 years ago, but that left a goodly section of roof, and Tom's the one that should have all this information, that is in the older part of the building, but hasn't been replaced.
Replaced or fixed? Because it still leaks, that place that was replaced.
They tore out, that was replacement, and if it still leaks, then we should fix it, but listen, I have most of that rubber roofing, because they threw it away at my house, it's wonderful for putting over wood. And stuff, they were throwing it out and they replaced I don't remember how many square feet. But those are the things that, we should have records of as to what's been done and what needs to be done, and that's the whole idea of a CIP, is so that we can plan for it. And with a playground, $80,000, that's not a big scary number, but it is a number that could be spread out over 2 or 3 years, 20,000 here, 30,000 there, and take a look at it rather than just one. And that's the whole point. You set up what you want and you put all of the years out and you try to wiggle it around, and it doesn't mean it's in stone, so that you're leveling out the taxes for the town. So you're not going like this with taxes.
So can I make a suggestion that the facilities committee gets together and goes over this list? I think Tim's brought up a lot of good ideas that we should include in there, the roof being definitely one of them.
I'm available anytime.
I think lockers, I'm kind of surprised to see that the
Lockers
lockers.
was an
Lockers aren't on
oversight,
there?
you're right. That should
The
be
lockers on
on
there and the stairs, replacement of the stairs in the bubblegum hallway.
And out front.
Yeah, and out front, sure, yep, because those are probably gonna need at some point too, so, why don't we have the facilities committee get together, play with this a little bit, then bring it back for next meeting? Would that be okay? One thing that just concerns me on this, looking at the fiscal year 2019 seems a little overstacked too, which seems like we're getting a lot of stuff that in 1 year, so we might want to look at that as well.
And why do we jump, for instance, from, 14,800 in 2018 for computer replacement to 36,000 for the following years?
Well, if you
Yeah, we'd
think
have to ask
about
Mr.
the
Anderson.
number
Your
of
one-to-ones
computers
will be
we,
aging out.
yeah, if you think about the number we bought, probably,
We have more
1 year
computers than
versus-
students, that's what I know.
I know you keep
And
bringing
you
that up,
asked Mr. Robert to make significant cuts to next year's, or to this year's budget. So that reflects the actual amount for the budget, and then the other numbers are what is in the plan, the technology plan.
Right, because we did cut it back quite a bit for this year, or for 2018.
Yeah.
And I think I would suggest that you get your CIP plan as inclusive as possible, and then as you go through the upcoming years, then you can make decisions about, all right, does this go for, into the budget? Does it go for a warrant article?
Right.
How are we gonna do this? And, Tim brings up the roofs over there. If you've got a capital improvement plan that's out 15, 20 years, and you've got a 25-year roof and you're 12 years into it, it should already be on your capital improvement plan for year 25. And then as you get closer, within 10 years, within 5 years, then you make the determination, all right, do we need to do this now, or do we bump it out another 5 years? But, you know, as inclusive as you can get a capital improvement plan for, you know, a 15 or 20-year stretch,
So
it's
can I
going
just
to be more
clarify? So we
accurate.
did this based on 5 years out, a project of $10,000 or more.
Yep.
So are we sticking with that? Do we want to look at?
It should be much longer out. for something. So I would like to make a suggestion that you ask Joe Gunter to send out the town's CIP form that would give all of us an idea of how they're doing it. So there's a form, and just, you know, have that to everybody, including the Ms. Young and anybody else that wants it, so that will give you a better idea of the longevity of it. And it just put things on back burners that you're watching. It doesn't mean we're doing them, we're watching them.
Well, something like the bleachers.
All of that kind of
Floor
thing,
in the gym.
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
the
you know.
floors in the school.
I mean, what we asked Ms. Young to do, though, was to get.
Oh,
the
yes,
whole point, it should be
absolutely.
out
We're not
20
saying we're
years,
going to
not
do
5
them.
years.
We're just saying we need to look at them and know that they're on our CIP and that,
Ms.
you know,
Young gave us a
plan
list
for
of what
them.
we asked her to get.
Yeah.
right? We asked for a list of 5-year things, over $10,000, and that's what we have. It's a good start. I think we need to groom it, to include some of these things, and we'll do that moving forward.
25, 30, 40, 50,
50 years from now.
50.
New building, new walls.
New landing pad for the spaceship.
Yeah.
Look at the mill buildings in Manchester. We need to build it like that. Those things are standing
Okay,
and nice.
They have those in the park.
you good with that for now? You know where we're going?
Sounds like
Excellent.
What do you got from here?
What's that?
What do you got from here? That's where we're going.
Very good. School board goals, Dr. Godomsky, you would want to go over those and come back with suggestions. Thanks.
Are we all on one page?
You can pass the other two down.
I'm getting there.
We talked briefly about the school board goals at the last meeting, and I suggested that we start attaching some action plans to each of the goals that the board had set down. And this is just a real first blush at that task of just an example of some of the things that might be in place as we work through these goals. Now, the purpose of the action plans are that's your roadmap to get your goals done, and it holds everybody's feet to the fire as to if we say we're going to do these action plans, and we complete all of the action plans, that by the end of the year, if we check all of those off the list, in theory, the goal should be either accomplished or substantially underway. So that's what I tried to do, is start off here putting down some of the action plans that would attend to your goals, and it's just a basis to start discussion.
I guess I just have a question on number 4 for number 2. Well, you know, number 2, the action plan number 4. And maybe it's just because I'm not in this school, but it seems to me weird that you would do the math and ELA and then jump to the related arts and Spanish, but not do the curriculum and everything for social studies and science first.
I think the feeling behind that was getting ELA and math, obviously, the first attention.
Absolutely.
And then from there, the related arts, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jocelyn, the related arts and the Spanish would be tying into our ELA and our math, making sure that that's inclusive in that. There are a lot of pieces to the ELA curriculum and a lot of pieces to the math curriculum when it's finalized that will be inclusive of responsibilities in other areas, and I think that that's what we're hoping to clarify.
Okay. I guess
And certainly, we would
the
then have...
viable curriculum part of it for science and social studies, I would just like to see that as, you know, versus the related arts and the Spanish.
The only curriculum that's come to this board in 7 years is social studies. It was excellent.
It's just, so I guess I
3, 4 years
understand
ago.
that, but-
And again, this is for the 17-18 year for action plans, so.
Right, but I was just reading it like, because from that point on, it says, and I guess I would have seen it as, you know, once you've done the ELA and math, then it would be going into science and social studies versus related arts and Spanish. But again, I don't do all of this, so.
I think we could certainly include science and social studies. I mean, the fact of the matter is those are being developed, so it wouldn't be creating something new for those teachers to do. I think we were just trying to narrow the focus for the curriculum director, but,
Yep.
I mean, the work is happening, so we could put it in there.
We could just add that as another action plan.
Right. So how do you guys want to go forward with this? I mean, I think this looks very reasonable. Might be worth us looking it over for 2 weeks and coming back at our next meeting to go through these and see if there's any modifications that we want done by then.
Yeah, I think they're all attainable. So,
Sound good to you?
Yeah, I just, my question would be, like, number 2, is it, I think they're attainable, absolutely, but if we don't do number 2 of number 2, does it make it less attainable?
Well, that certainly it does. I mean, you've got action plans. I mean,
nailed that one right on the head.
Well, but there are other schools that do not have a full-time curriculum director that do
True.
this every day with more students, so that's why I'm asking this
I mean,
question.
yeah, these are board goals that we want to reach. I mean, if we fail to reach our board goals, then we look back and we evaluate ourselves why we didn't reach them. And it's not that we stink as a committee or anything like that as a board. We just need to go back and evaluate each other.
We may not attain all of our goals,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I mean, that's like Shane said, we use it, it's an evaluation tool, and see where did we go wrong, what can we do better? They should be achievable, I think they are achievable, but that's not to say that they are all gonna be achieved.
And these action plans are to hold our feet to the fire. So if we come down, like you say, if we come down to even, October or November, and we're looking at our action plans and saying, wait a minute, we haven't nominated and hired a curriculum director yet, it would cause us to take a step and say, why not? If the why not is, I haven't gotten to it yet, then that's not a good answer. If the why not is, we've had 15 applicants and we've reposted 5 times, and, then maybe we need to readjust for some other model. But I think that's the important piece, to hold your feet to the fire, all of our feet to the fire, and be evaluating it along the way.
Okay, so let's everybody take a look at these goals, and plan on coming back on the 15th, not 15th, the 20th, to vote on them, basically. If there's any last minute changes that we need at that time, we'll consider those, but
In the meantime, if there are, as you review these, if there are any additional action plans that you feel would be appropriate, or things that you have question about, please give us a call so we can revise it into a more complete document by the next agenda.
so let's just make sure that's on the agenda for next. Parking lot items, most of these look like they are stuff we've either covered or will cover with this CIP plan and the facilities committee. The only outstanding one here is meeting with selectmen, which is supposed to happen at some point in the summer. I don't know if I was supposed to call Scott before now. I didn't, if I was supposed to.
That's what you said at the last meeting,
Yeah.
that you would reach out to
Yeah,
us.
I have not reached out to Scott, so that's my
It wasn't
bad, but-
Scott, it's not Scott anymore.
No, it's not Scott, it's Rick, I'm sorry, it's Rick.
Yeah.
Do we want to have put together a more,
I don't think that we should do that until we have the CIP
that's what I was saying, yeah, should we,
finalized.
right, if we have a better CIP plan, and then we can go
We
meet
can
with them.
finish that CIP plan this month, we can meet with the board in August.
Yeah, That sound good, everybody?
It might not be bad just to reach out to them and say, we're looking at this, we want to do, you know, complete our CIP plan, and then, because then at least they'll know what we want to
Yes,
talk
that's a good
about
idea, right.
and meet and, you know, discuss and see if there's anything that they want us to
But I mean,
bring.
if we're thinking August, we should contact them now
Yep,
and say,
I
hey,
totally agree.
we're thinking August.
Let me put in a reminder to do that right now, so I don't forget to do it. So, that sounds good to me. Oops. 8:30?
I'm kind of curious why the bus situation wasn't on our agenda.
I can update you in non-public.
Talk about that.
Are we going to have a public discussion about it? I mean, she sold her buses, she's out of business, and we don't have buses. It's what, 6 weeks away?
Presently, you've got an RFP out for bids, and the RFP, the bids close on Monday at 2 o'clock.
Have we had any come in?
I think I can update you in non-public.
Okay.
Okay, school board timeline. We have the July school schedule. Presentation discussion of staff and student and parent handbooks. July, so is that on your radar?
It is.
The,
Yep, I will
handbooks
have
too?
a draft of both for you next time. There are some cafe service personnel type things that won't be in, and some policy things that we need to change, but I should have the
Okay.
majority of it.
Review bus routes, that will have to wait. Obviously. Future agenda items. So right now, what we have for our agenda is that, for the 20th, is that the facilities committee will come back with a little more filled out CIP plan. We will vote on the board goals. Anything else anybody wants to put on the agenda for our next meeting? Okay. As always, let me know 7 days before, please, if you'd like to add something, and we can get it on there. Future meetings, we do have our regularly scheduled meeting July 20th coming up. And after that, we have regular board meetings August 3rd and 17th. And our next joint board meeting at the SAU office is August 28th. Is there any closing public comment?
I do, actually.
Come on up.
I heard a lot of talk about the report and survey data, questions regarding the definitions and potential discrepancies. And I think that's completely unacceptable that you're getting that from the DOE. You know, if they're giving you information and you don't understand it, it's useless. So, you know, that sounds like a mess, and I think that should be looked into further, and I'm going to look into it myself further.
I can speak to you after public session, but that's not really a state issue as to why it's so messy. And I can explain that after. It has to do with the performance plan that's required by the federal government that makes it confusing for people.
Okay,
But I
I'd
can
be very
definitely- we
interested
can
to
talk.
know, because
Yep.
if you're getting data, you know, if the board's getting data and you don't understand what it means.
I understand what it means. What it means is that we can talk about this after. I'm not in public comment.
All right. And what Tim brought up about the stipends, I don't think that's going away, and I think he brought up a great point. And I think everyone else brought up great points in opposition, but it sounds like something that can't be really kicked down the road, and I think you guys should look into it further down the road, you know, to have some sort of a system. The chair discussed a policy. There's got to be something. I mean, it's not going to go away with this director stipend, I don't think. And that's all I have. And I think you guys did a great job talking things out.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? So,
Good evening. I just want to speak to the 8th grade thing. I know I see what Barbie is saying about what Tim is saying is putting it back into the clubs. So maybe a suggestion, me thinking outside of the box here, I heard Jocelyn say putting 120 hours in. 40 of those hours is already budgeted from what was stated by her. So the other 80 hours, is there a way to still utilize and move some of the club monies around to make an additional, maybe it's not an additional 80 hours, but an additional 40 hours? So that would give 2 people $1,000 stipends, because it's not a one-person job. That bare bones, those 2 individuals, because this year, or last year, it was 8th grade and 8th grade assistant. So there were actually 2 people, not the 7th grade advisor. So you added that one in, and that's why you took that over out of the clubs. But this is a 2-person job with the amount of hours, because they estimated, I think it was 170 hours when they totaled up their hours. So 120 hours is still below what they put in. So is there a way, I don't know if we can call it advisor in the club line, but calling it something else so that it's really not an advisor position, but that would lessen the amount of dollars or something from your line to put something back into the club's line as well. I don't know if that's a fix or not, but it will get 2 people instead of 1 person. So just a suggestion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Stoll?
Yeah, just, hopefully I'm not beating a dead horse, deader, or whatever, but as far as the SIP thing goes and whatever, when I was a selectman, I worked on the last one that we tried to get going, and from what I can see, you're basically starting from the very beginning, because the schools never really had a SIP plan. So you all brought up a lot of really great things that need to be thought about and included in that. Were I involved in doing this, I'd be getting someone to go up on the roof and figure out what kind of shape is it in, how long will this piece last, how long will that piece last, so that you know, you've got a better idea other than we think the roof will last 15 more years. The same thing with the bleachers. Have professionals come over, not to give bids, not to give quotes, but to give you some idea of life expectancy of these things. The boiler, we've known the boiler's had issues for years. So whether that makes it another 2 or 3 years, I don't know the current status, but I just remember hearing about the boiler for years. It's a lot of work this time around, because you've got to hit all of these different things that you've never thought of before, because you haven't had a plan before. Once you have those in place, then it's just tweaking from year to year. Oh, gee, the roof developed a leak, so instead of 8 years from now, we got to look at that for next year. I encourage you to really look at everything. We need windows replaced because they may be leaking, or I don't know what kind of windows you have here, if they've got the gas in them, or mine at home you can't see anything out of anymore because the gas is gone between the 2 panes. Those kinds of things. So I would encourage you to really look hard. And I think it's an excellent idea to get a copy of the town's process, because that may give you more ideas of things to look at.
Thanks. Anyone else? Any member of the board like to address the board at this time?
I'd just like to say real quick to Ms. Dow, thank you for your suggestion. But the whole point of taking the advisor out was so that for the greater community, at least that's my take on it, is that for the greater community of the whole school, having more clubs.
And that's what I did hear from the board.
Right, and that's, right, and thank you for your suggestion, but that's why I voted yes to have those advisors taken out of that club stipend, so that it wasn't that amount, like the $1,750 or whatever, wasn't being taken away from the community as a whole.
What's that?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. All right, that's going to end our public comment session. We do have need for a non-public session. So I will move that we move into non-public under RSA 91-A:3, Part 2C. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Mr. Wells? Ms.
Yes.
Hartford? Mr. McGreens, yes. Ms. Flinter?
Yes.
Yes?
Mr. Danver, yes. All right. We're in non-public.